Cat, home of brilliant children's books. Meow.
Hello and welcome to another Tomser Cat Storytelling book review. It's my first one in a while. Sharon's been doing quite a lot of them. And today I'm going to be doing the big book by Richard Osman, The Thursday Murder Club. A bestseller in the UK, but is it any good? Let's read the blurb. In a peaceful retirement village, 4 unlikely friends meet up once a week to investigate unsolved murders. But when a brutal killing takes place on their very doorstep, the Thursday Murder Club find themselves in the middle of their first live case. Elizabeth, Joyce, Ibrahim and Ron might be pushing 80, but they still have a few tricks up their sleeves. Can our unorthodox but brilliant gang catch the killer before it's too late? So there you go. As always, if you are enjoying this channel, please like, subscribe and click the bell and you will never miss another episode. So is this book any good? Well, just to give you a little bit more detail, the Thursday murder group meet on a Thursday because that's the only sort of time that they can fit it in with all the other clubs that's happening in the sort of retirement village. So they're all pushing 80 and they're all very, very different characters. There's Ron, who's like an ex-Labour union official who's like been with the likes of Arthur Scargill and all that in the 80s, and his son is a well-known boxer. There's Joyce, who's a retired nurse. There's Ibrahim, who's a retired psychiatrist. And then there's Elizabeth. Elizabeth. Yeah, she really adds spice to this story, because no one really knows what Elizabeth is or her background. She seems to be like an MI5 operative, like a female James Bond, but the clues are never actually given away as to what exactly Elizabeth is or what her background is. And this book is unusual in a number of ways, because Joyce writes in the first person, because she writes diary entries to tell you what's happening. So she writes extended diary entries. And the rest of the book is written in the third person. And I know it's a small point, but like, do you know, like normally when you write a book, it's so and so said this, or said someone, or said this. But Richard Osman doesn't use the word said at all. He uses the word says, as in S-A-Y-S, which is only a small change, but it really caught my mind off guard in terms of it seemed to make it more immediate. And when I was reading this book, I could see it on the telly. You know, it's so immediate. You could almost picture it going. I mean, it's not like a screenplay. I'm not saying that, but you could see it almost going straight to a screenplay. And they solve murders, so they look at past murders in the newspapers or whatever, or police files that they're looking at, or Elizabeth somehow obtains. But then a real life murder happens on their turf, so to speak. And what happens is there's a business developer. There's a business developer called Ian Ventham, and he's got a partner, Tony Curran, and they're a little bit shifty but very successful. But they own a sort of retirement village, and they want to expand this retirement village over an old graveyard, because the site of the village used to be a convent with nuns and everything. And there's an old farmer at the top of the hill who doesn't want to sell his land, but Ian Ventham is after his land, and also Ian Ventham wants to cut Tony Curran, who's his partner, who's a bit shady, bit of a roughneck. wants to cut him out of the deal. So he's gonna fire Tony Curran and say he's no longer needed. So they have this big argument before they're meeting with the residents to tell them what they want to do, and they want to expand and everything, and there's all these objections and everything else. And then Tony and Ian have this argument because Ian wants to get rid of Tony, and Tony really isn't happy about it at all. So a lot of people witness this argument, and then when Tony Curran goes home, he gets murdered. So he gets murdered, and so the chief suspect is then Ian Bentham. But then something nasty happens to Ian Bentham. So I don't really want to give too much away. But what I would say is that the characters in this book, with all their different backgrounds, and the style that Joyce writes in the first person, but everything else is in the third person, is really quite refreshing. I did find the book hard to get into because it's got so many recommendations here, and even on the inside cover there's loads of recommendations about how brilliant the book is. But for me it was a little bit of a slow burn. I don't read a lot of crime thrillers, if you like, but this was definitely a sort of slow burn. I don't watch Murder in Paradise or those sort of things, but this is this sort of book. It's this sort of book, and these characters, particularly Elizabeth, but they all complement each other. You got Elizabeth, who's like very intelligent and knows all the angles. You got Ron, who's like a bull at the gate. You got Ibrahim, who's very intellectual and very methodical, and then you got Joyce, who's your everyday old age pensioner, if you like, and very jolly and just goes along for the ride, and yet they complement each other perfectly. But for me, it took me ages to get into the book. Now look, this could just be me, because once I did get into it, and I had to get past a third of it, to be honest, then I couldn't put it down. Then it became the book that everyone is just saying is brilliant, and you can see that it is brilliant, and like the subtle twists and turns. And then you've got two policemen involved, a detective inspector who's a little bit overweight and a little bit past it, and a young eager detective who gets promoted onto the case because she knows some of the residents and this, that and the other, and they're into play as well. And the way that it's written is very fresh, and it gives you insights into the detective's life and how he feels and everything else. And I know lots of books do this anyway, but it seems to do it in a fresh way. And even though for me it was a slow burn at the start, I really enjoy once I got up past a third of the way in, which I know is quite a size, but I think my problem is that I wasn't reading it regularly. So, I might read it every 3 or 4 days, so I wasn't picking up the thread. And so I think that's why it became, and my mother-in-law came to stay, and so, I just didn't read as much. But once I got into it, it was really, really good. And there were twists here which I never suspected, which is great. And you think, oh, who's this? Who's done this and who's done that? And then, it was really good. And now he's got the next one out. I can't remember what it's called. So, what would I give this? If it was, for me, if I had got into it as well as what I was right at the end, I would give this 5 stars. But I'm going to give it 4, which for a record-breaking #1 bestseller, as it says on the front. And I couldn't get Richard Osman out of my mind off what's it called? Pointless. I couldn't get him out. I don't watch the other games thing he does, but I couldn't get him out of my mind. But honestly, a really well written book, an unusually written book for me, and I am looking forward to reading the next one. So for me, it is a 4 stars, not a 5. The Thursday Murder Club. I think the next one's called The Man Who Died Twice or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I will be looking at that, because the characters that Richard has created have really got a lot of mileage. I hope they don't die, because they are in their 80s, but being the author, I'm sure they won't die. And a lot of this as well, I don't think I'm giving anything away, goes into the past and people's histories and this, that and the other. And as I say, I don't read a lot of murder mysteries, so this is quite refreshing for me, but particularly the way that it's written, and I greatly look forward to the next one. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you are, please subscribe to the channel. You might see Sarah on the next one, because I don't do many on my own, but it was a real pleasure to do this one. Richard Osman, The Thursday Murder Club.